Good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of CyberGangsters CyberSecurity, the YouTube. I want
Woohoo.
to, for all of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, I'd like to say thank you and hello. My name is Jaime Pina, and my guest is, I always forget which side of the window you are. My guest is the talented and wonderful Peggy Nolan. You
Hello.
you all are going to get to know some information about her and things here as we go on tonight. But I hope that you all are having a great evening, that you are coming in ready to learn and just hear some stuff. If you are, throw a comment, tell me where you're listening from, just so I can see where
Yeah,
everybody's
I'd
from, and
love
Peggy
to
can.
know where people are listening in from.
Yeah,
That's
it
always
always
fun.
amazes me how far, like when you do something like this, the reaches that it gets to, right? Because it's not just right now and today, but I usually can get some. I'll get some comments like later on in the week and stuff, and so people are
At some
watching
point,
later.
maybe after the show, remind me. I need to get your YouTube link so that I could put it out in my newsletter so that people can go out and watch it. That way you can get more views and,
You
they
bet. Yeah,
get to learn a little bit more.
I appreciate any little bit you can do. So, everyone, we were talking about it just a minute ago before we went live. Um, Peggy and I, like, I feel Peggy, like the heart is definitely, when we talk about it every time, we're hoping to share information and not hoard it, and
Mhm.
give it out there for everyone to learn and grow. And so, I appreciate anything in the spirit of that. So
Yes,
thank you very much.
absolutely.
Tell me how your week's been, real quick, Peggy.
So far, my week's been really good. Believe it or not, I have another side gig that I do, and I'm ramping into my busy season. So I have a
Oh,
handmade business.
uh-huh.
I'm a crocheter, not to be confused with knitting. I love my knitting friends, but I crochet. I use a hook and yarn. I make hats, scarves, all kinds of good stuff. And my busy season is kicking in. I've made over 100 hats for Cider Hill Farms. I'm making another 40 for them. And yeah, busy, busy.
So that's funny to say that, because on I don't remember what it's called now, the Nextdoor or the Neighborhood app, whichever
Yeah,
one it is,
yeah.
I've seen a lot of the crocheting and knitting, products start showing up, and
Oh, yeah.
it's funny to mention. My grandma taught me how to crochet when I was a young boy, and
Really? Good for your
yeah,
grandma
it was
talking to you.
it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, and she's passed, but I do
Yeah.
think about it often, and I'm like, those were fun times.
Yes,
Um,
I actually have a whole nother side business that I do, and it's my busy season. So if
yeah.
I'm not doing PCI and teaching others how to do PCI, North Carolina, hello. Um, I am sitting on the couch crocheting. I
How
am.
fun is that? Relaxing too, like,
Yes. Hi
you
from
know.
New Jersey.
I think that was one of the fun things from it, is starting off from the little bit, and then when you were done, you'd have whatever this product was, and
Yeah.
it was just like, wow. And I remember doing like coasters, hats,
Blanket.
scarves, blankets, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it was fun because you just be at least for me, I'd just be walking around and I'd have this yarn following me everywhere, and it'd just be like, "Doo, doo, 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 doo."
Yeah, I,
So,
I, I don't do that. I do sometimes take it with me, especially if I've got a big order. Hello
Louisville.
from Louisville. Hi. Just so everybody knows, I'm from Derry, New Hampshire. Anybody in New England listening? Miami,
Ah.
Florida. Woohoo.
And I'm from Central Illinois, a little town called Normal, believe it or not.
Normal,
Yes.
normal. Normal is a setting on the dryer.
I like that. I've never heard that one.
Yeah,
Uh,
normal. Yeah. So, when everybody tells you to try to be normal, my mama always used to say, honey, normal is a setting on the
I
dryer.
like that. I have to remember that. I have to tell my family that.
Yeah.
Margarito's here. He says, y'all guys are awesome. I'm transitioning into cybersecurity after 34 years in the warehouse industry. Wow.
Wow.
Well,
I am
welcome to the
impressed.
field, Margarito.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We got
Yeah.
everyone showing up.
Miami, Florida. Yes.
Mhm. We got Atlanta, Georgia here. Thanks,
Atlanta.
Derek. Pleasure to welcome you.
Las
Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
Woo!
So, real quick on Las Vegas, that's where we went. My wife and I, we took our honeymoon almost nearly 20 years ago. And I wish I had known then what I know now about, like, when they have the yearly Red Hat conferences, or
Mm.
the
Black
there's
hat.
Yeah, they have this thing where they use social engineering and it's a contest and they're like, we're going to hack a business. So that's a hot topic right now because MGM's recent snafu, everyone's knows about it. And they're like, surely it wasn't a phone call in just a few minutes. And it was like, yeah, yep. But to hear, so if you're in my circles, everyone, I have a Discord where it's the CyberGangsters also. And in there, I share podcasts, and Darknet Diaries is one of my favorite ones, and he does quite a few podcasts on social engineering slash basically people who hack companies and things like that, and the stories are out of this world, and you're like, surely no one would just give the keys to the company to someone who just asked for it.
Right.
Yeah. It kind of happens
scary out there.
Yeah. Daniel, hey, welcome. He's from Dallas, Texas.
Dallas. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm from Richmond, Texas. That's the Houston area.
Yeah.
So I was from Lubbock, Texas, which is in the Panhandle. That's where Texas Tech is at. But anyway, everyone. Okay, so let me just briefly tell you this. Peggy was talking to us last week about well, let me rephrase this. She mentioned the ROC template.
Yeah, the reporting instructions.
Yes, there was something, Peggy, that you said that resonated with me. And it was funny because I'd been talking to a few people and the same thing resonated with them. And so I had asked Peggy, I was like, can we talk about the report on compliance template, basically the ROC template? Last week, what really hooked me in was when you said that if everyone could really use this because this is what the QSA uses to validate level 1 merchants, some level 2s, and the ones that the acquirers say, you're just going to have to do a ROC also. They use this, and Peggy showed us. She had a glimpse. She showed us of her workbook, her binder.
My binder.
Your binder, and it had she printed out all like 189 or something, almost 200 pages of the ROC template.
There's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
And version 4 is even more. I still have version 3.2.1 in my binder.
Okay.
I have to break out and do 4.0, but I'm going to kill a lot of trees with that one.
Yeah. So if all of you who are printing it out also, you're feeling a little guilty, I mean, it's helpful. Everyone has one except for me, but I will soon be adding one to my collection.
Yeah.
But in that conversation, like the takeaway for me was really this, Peggy, was like, so a question I get asked a lot is, what is like a typical day for someone who works as an auditor for PCI for companies?
They're not auditors, they're assessors.
Assessors.
Yeah, don't call USA an auditor. They might bite your head off.
Okay, I appreciate that.
They're assessors.
You told us that the ROC template was what they used to go by to validate everything. And if we went by that, we would understand kind of what all is encapsulating in doing an assessment.
Absolutely, 100%. You win the gold prize today. So backstory, back in 2011, when I was a senior IT project manager and I was running 10 projects to get the cardholder data environment secure, I didn't know anything about PCI in 2011. I was in to run these projects to get everything stood up so that I didn't know what they were doing. I'm like, okay, we've got 10 technologies we're going to implement. And I was running all the projects. But I heard through the grapevine that they were having a hard time getting the first report on compliance over the finish line. Now that company was a level 2 assessing as 1 because they were about to tip over that 6 million transaction threshold. And it comes to find out that there was a big miss in what they thought they were doing, not only in the definition of scope, but just in their requirements. They had been following the data security standard. So the DSS, they were, self-assessing using a SAC-D. So basically they were doing all of the requirements, the same that is in a report on compliance. But what they weren't doing was they weren't matching it to the reporting template. They were only going off the SAC-D. And if everybody looks at what a self-assessment questionnaire is, it's a bunch of questions.
Yes.
All right. It's a questionnaire.
Right,
Now,
right.
in version 4.0, they have made them statements, but I think they're still going to refer to them as self-assessment questionnaires, even though they're now self-assessment statements, because they don't end in question marks. They end in periods. Okay. That's my funny for today.
I think it's funny.
And if I don't find things that are funny in PCI, we might as well all cry, right?
Yes.
So I remember taking on the role. So long story short, I took on the role to run the PCI compliance program, and I was fiddling around. I was out on the council's website. I discovered their resource library. Now I have a degree in history, so I know how to do my research. All right.
Okay.
And this is where rubber hits the road. Guys, if you're going into PCI, you need to know how to research. You need to know how to ask Google questions, right? Because we don't have a card file anymore, and we don't use encyclopedias. We use Google. So you need to know how to ask the right questions. So I went out, I was in there, and I found the reporting template. Now, this is way back in version 2.0. I found the reporting template, was going through it, and it just dawned on me, oh my God, why aren't we using this? Why aren't we using this to do our report on compliance? I walked into the director of security operations and I said, hey, look what I found. I found why we can't get the report on compliance across the finish line because we're not using this. We don't know what the QSA needs to know. So if we're not, so when I took on the role to run the PCI compliance program, it's not that I ditched the DSS. I didn't ditch it.
Right.
It didn't become my binder because all my requirements are in here still. All the testing procedures are in here. And it also tells you the reporting instructions. What does the QSA need to write up the control?
So, and I think that's where it was really capturing last week, Peggy, was because a lot of times we can get confused on what we're seeing in the DSS, and it's there and it's legitimate still, everyone. Like it's not like it's
you don't ditch it, you don't say goodbye. But if you have to assess this way, and even if you're self-assessing, cross-check with the reporting instructions. It's going to tell you the evidence that you need.
Yes. So it's like having not so much as having the answers to the test, right?
No, it is having the answers to the test.
Okay. Okay.
All the answers are in here.
So you don't take any guessing into
it. There is no guessing. You need a configuration screenshot to see that logging's been enabled for 12 months in your antivirus system or your anti-malware system.
Right.
Okay.
So let me run everyone through this real quick because I want to make sure if you're tuning in, you're on your computer and you can do this live. I'm going to show you where you can go to get your ROC template real quick. It won't take too long. Hey, Demario, welcome. Hey, Saeed.
All right. Connecticut. He's in New England.
Okay, so I'm just opened up Firefox here. Don't read any more into it than I just opened a private browser. I have several browsers on my computer. I just opened up one here, okay? So we come in here. I'm just going to go PCI Security Standards.org.
And you're going to go to the resource library, resources, documentation, and then you're going to scroll down and you're going to go into
so there's a search field right here at the bottom of the page.
Yep.
And then you're going to just type in ROC and you'll see it pop up right there. It says ROC template. There's a lot of other stuff under there. For today's purposes, we're just looking for the ROC template. Once you pull that in there, you're going to see the results pop up here, and you'll just look for ROC template. Now, because we're in this funny transition period right now,
3.2.1 is still available.
So you'll just need to pull the drop-down box, click on 3.2.1, and then you'll hit this little orange arrow down button, which is download.
I highly recommend that you download both.
And so you'll see you can hit the orange button right there, download. And the way my system is set up, I have it so that it opens up in the browser and then I can download from here if I still want to see it. but it's honestly, it's as easy as that. Once you have it downloaded, once you have it here, it's on here. And then next step it, and you can see I always look at how small the little track button is down over here, and that tells me that there's obviously a ton of pages. So if I just scroll down all the way to the bottom, there's 186 pages. I think I said 189 earlier, so pretty close.
And there's more. I think it's up to 300 pages for version 4. Don't quote me on that though.
Okay, so
there's just a lot more. So
there's where you can get it. If you want to grab that now while we're talking and you're at your computer and you can, that's how you do it.
And if nobody's told you to go get that until now, this I talk about this all the time. In the course, the workshop, the on-demand workshop, Decrypting PCI DSS Requirements, I talk about the report on compliance template, and I talk about cross-referencing with it, because if you don't, you will have big gaps in your assessment. Because the DSS, you have to really read like it's a math word problem and really dissect it and say, okay, this needs documentation, this needs a screenshot. The report on compliance template spells it out. It tells you what you need. So you might as well like start learning this, right? Because I can't be the only one going to merchant organizations and teaching this, right? There needs to be a troop of people that understand how to do this and to go in and prep organizations before the QSA comes on site. Do you realize how much easier it's going to be for that organization, how much easier it's going to be for all your system administrators that you know what to get, when to get it, and how to get it, and how much easier it is for the QSA to come in, do their assessment, and get out.
Right.
And not cost you an arm and a leg.
And that's one of the keys, right? So a lot of times we're thinking only about the assessment in terms of the work that's being done there, but there's a lot of external factors that are involved with that too that we don't always think about, right? And it's what Peggy just alluded to, the idea of the cost, right? Which is a big deal. I think last week, for example, Peggy, I think you had mentioned for I think it was $250,000 is what you said that can
That's
cost
where it starts.
So anything, I won't say it's not like a nickel and diming situation, but let's be honest here. Having this information beforehand, you don't have to wait for the QSA to show up before you start doing any of this. And one of the things that I've learned through Peggy is the continuous compliance. This is something that it should always be done so that you're always on top of it. Ideally, the way I've pictured it, Peggy, is like I am trying to really adapt the mindset of continuous compliance.
Absolutely, 100%.
And so that way, ideally, if at any point a compliance needs to be run, I know that's not the way it works, but I should be able to just pick up and be like, I have X amount of the data that I need to do this. I just need X amount more in. So anyhow, let me point out real quick, because there were a couple people. Here we go. Ryan says, how late am I? And you're not too late. Ryan. You're fine. You're fine. It's not too late. Janae did say, show a side-by-side of both the DSS and the template.
I've done that in the class that I teach. I show you what the DSS says, right? And then what the reporting template, the requirement doesn't change, right? So what they've done in the column structure of the reporting template is they combine the requirement with the testing procedure. Whereas the DSS is the requirement, the testing procedure, the guidance. In the reporting template, it is the requirement and testing procedure, the reporting instructions, and then the assessor's response.
I did want to mention to you all real quick, we'll come right back to that, but I looked here. So this is 3.2.1's ROC template at 186 pages. 4.0's is sitting at 470 pages.
Oh, I said 300.
So, and that's what I thought Janae was asking at first before I read it all the way, and she was saying show them side by side, but still. So there's a big difference between 3.2.1 and 4.0.
Yeah, that's in as far as page count goes. Yeah. And it's because they add the customized approach to every single requirement.
Oh,
Where
okay.
I honestly, if somebody's listening to me from the council, I will see members of the council. I will say, why didn't you just include the instructions and make it an appendix, just like we do for compensating controls? We don't put the compensating control for every single requirement because theoretically you could comp control the entire ROC. You wouldn't want to, but you could theoretically.
Yeah.
But you have instructions and then you have an appendix, right? And I honestly believe the same thing. It would have not taken up 470 pages. I'm all about efficiency.
Yeah. And so just to give me a second here, Janae, let me just get to a random page. No specific.
Was it? Were you in the appendix?
I was, but Janae had wanted to see the DSS.
Side by side, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to see if I can do something like that as best I can. Just showing randomness. So on the right is the DSS. And if you spent any time in PCI whatsoever, this is familiar. This is one of the things that a lot of people have seen first time.
Right.
And then I feel like the ROC template is something that we learn afterwards.
And you should, you know what, to be honest with you, that's what you need to go to first. And yes, you need to, understand the DSS. Mm-hmm. But if you are a level 1 merchant and you're working for a level 1 merchant or that level 2 that's about to tip over, mm-hmm. you need to be looking at the reporting template, period. It's got everything you need in it. And you can always cross-reference for the guidance and the intent, which is in the DSS. But the reporting template is your gold. That's your gold. That's what sets you up for continuous compliance. That's what gets your program from chaos to easy peasy. You have to know exactly what the QSA needs to be looking at. So when they come on site, they're teed up and ready to go. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They come into your organization. They love working with you because you have it all set up. And you set it up based on the reporting template.
Hey, Gregory. Welcome. Hello, guys. I'm new in the PCI DSS space, just trying to learn how to break into this field. Joining from Satchsea, Texas. I hope I said that right. Janae says, agreed, Peggy. It makes so much sense to learn based off the ROC.
Yep. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us, Peggy, so like from the get-go, like for example, Gregory said he's just breaking into here and he's wanting to learn. So can you give us like a breakdown on the ROC template? Like what are some of the things that differentiates it from the DSS?
Like I said, it tells you what you need to provide. It tells you what the assessor needs to be looking at so that they can write up their control. Do you see that column in green?
Yes.
That's your reporting instructions.
So when they look at this is what they need to do. So let's just look at this real quick.
So for example, now I don't know, are you in version 4 or you're in version 4? My notebook, my printed out version is still 3.2.1. So for example, requirement 1.1.4.c, observe network configurations, verify that firewalls in place at each internet connection and between any DMZ in the internal network zone per the documented configuration standards and network diagrams. The reporting instructions say, 1, describe how network configurations verified that per the documented configuration standards and network diagrams of firewalls in place at each internet connection and between any DMZ and network zones. What are the 2 things you need for the QSA to write that control up?
I accidentally took a break, unplanned break, Peggy. I'm so sorry. My screen froze on my side too.
All right. So the 2 things. So for those of you who are listening, what 2 things do you need to have? Anybody take a guess?
And which requirement were we looking at?
So I'm in version 3.2.1.
Okay.
All right. I'm not looking. I'm 1.4.c. 1.1.1.114c. Observe network configurations to verify that a firewall is in place at each internet connection and between any DMZ in the internal network zone per the documented configuration standards and network diagrams. Now that's the requirement and testing procedures squished together.
Okay.
All right. The reporting instructions say, 1, describe how network configurations verified that per the documented configuration standards and network diagrams, a firewall is in place at each internet connection and between any DMZ and the internal network zone. You actually need 3 things. So what 3 things do you need to have before the QSA comes on board? What 3 things will you have ready for them to assess this?
Ryan's coming in and he says network diagram and configuration standard.
One more thing.
Janae says network diagram and configuration settings and the ISP.
I don't know what your ISP is.
Okay. Internet service providers, I think what she's saying right there.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with an ISP.
Okay. Anyone else out there? Establish definitely the network diagram and the configuration standards.
You also need the configuration settings.
Say that again.
You also need the configuration settings. The network configs. The network configuration.
Oh, I see. There's yeah. So the network
can,
diagram configuration standard and then the configuration settings.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
I'm sorry. It was information security policy, not.
Nope, it's not that. It's not your information security policy. It is your configuration standards.
There you go. Ivan came in with network diagram configuration settings and Windows configuration standards.
This is going to be good. All right, hang on.
And we'll just tell everyone, it's like, it's like you have your standards that the company says here's what it needs to be, and then the actual settings that are on those components, and you have to match those up to make sure that they're going by what the standards are. And then you also want to make sure that those match up to PCI and that they are compliant with what PCI says it needs to be.
Okay, so here we go. Here's another random question for you all. This is requirement 5.1.1. Review vendor documentation and examine antivirus configurations to verify that antivirus programs detect all known types of malicious software, remove all known types of malicious software, and protect against all known types of malicious software. Do you see how monotonous this gets?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the requirement and testing procedure together. The reporting instructions. Identify the vendor documentation review to verify that antivirus programs detect all known types of software, remove all known types of malicious software, protect against all known types of malicious software. So that's 1. 2, describe how antivirus configurations verified that antivirus programs detect, remove, protect. What do you need?
Miss Eve, LOL, so malicious.
Yeah. What do you need in order to assess this control?
Which control were we at again?
5.1.1.
Okay.
I'm in version 3.2.1.
Okay. 5.5.1.
Are you in version 4 or 3.2.1?
3.2.1.
Okay. So any guesses? Anybody from the crowd?
Yep, here we go. Ryan says vendor documentation and ASV configs.
Nope, not ASVs. You don't need that.
And maybe logs to go with it.
Nope. Pay attention. Identify the vendor documentation. Describe how antivirus configurations verify that antivirus programs protect, detect, and remove.
So the vendor documentation.
What else?
And the configurations.
Yes. This isn't rocket science. It's a word problem.
Yeah. And I know sometimes I can have the tendency to not look directly at what's on the screen sometimes. And here, review vendor documentation and examine the antivirus configurations.
Right. And how are you going to examine? And how are you going to examine the antivirus configurations. This is during a real-time interview and observation. So the QSA is sitting with the antivirus technologist, whoever is in charge, the system administrator, and they're walking through the config settings of the management console.
Yes. And I've been on that side where we have opened it up and have shown them either through a screen share or you could do screenshots. It's just never seems.
Nope. Screenshots are perfectly acceptable.
Okay. I've always done it though in a way where we've shown them.
Don't overthink it. A screenshot is perfectly acceptable evidence, because when I would have my system administrator sit for interviews, I was, I'm feeding multiple birds from one hand. We're getting this all done in one shot. You're having your interview. We're doing real-time configuration or observations of configurations, right? So you're going to walk the QSA through your management console. So you better know how you configured it. Okay.
And that's why it's important to have those professionals there.
And then
like you said.
And then they screenshot, and then I will tell them you need, the QSA usually during a QSA interview, I, as the ISA, was on every interview because I was a buffer zone. And I made sure the QSA didn't go where they weren't supposed to go. And I made sure that the system administrator stayed on task. However, when the QSA said, can you screenshot that configuration? They would screenshot it, drop it into a Word document. And during the interview, they just have that Word document open, drop those screenshots into the Word document. And then when they're done, they sent it to me. And I uploaded it as evidence of the interview. It's done in 30 minutes.
So is it having one document for all the requirements, or is it?
It's per interview.
Okay.
And I go through it through the interview and observation schedule that we have available that people can use. The work is done for you. You don't have to try and reinvent the wheel. Next month, I will have version 4's interview and observation schedule up in our resource center. But right now you can get version 3.2.1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Here it comes.
Right. So here's pop quiz. I want to do requirement 6.
Okay.
All right. All right, so 6.1 is a twofer. So 6.1a, examine policies and procedures to verify that the processes are defined for the following: to identify new security vulnerabilities, to assign a risk ranking to vulnerabilities, and to include using reputable outside sources for security vulnerability information. 6.1b, interview responsible personnel and observe processes to verify that new security vulnerabilities are identified, a risk ranking is assigned, and processes to identify new security vulnerabilities and using reputable sources, outside sources. All right, so what do you need?
So you need the policies and the procedures.
This isn't for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I want the people on the call to answer. What do you need?
I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
What do you need?
While y'all are typing on your keyboards and your phones, Jordan says, can you drop a link for the interview schedule resource?
Paymentcardassessments.com. Go to our shop.
Yep. I will make sure to put that link in the comments. Who said that? That was Jordan. So you're on YouTube. Yes, I can put that and it will show up for you.
Yeah. Just go to paymentcardassessments.com and you can go click on our shop link. It's a digital download. If you are listening and you're in the resource center, you're a subscriber, you already have that available to you in the resource center. And if you're not using it,
Ryan Wilson, information security policy, Peggy.
Nope.
Derek Watson, policies and procedures.
What kind?
Janae says policy and procedures, interview employees that they are aware of the policy.
No. Not just that they're aware. I can be aware of it, but if I don't know how to do it, so you're interviewing the person that is responsible for this requirement. They have to know how to do this, and they have to walk the QSA through this. This is what we do. These are the outside sources that we do, right? And inside the process and procedure document, it's going to have this all written out, and they're going to bring that to the interview with them because it's not a closed book test. Don't overthink this. What is said, what you see in green on the screen is what you need to have.
So policies and procedures are correct. Which policies and procedures?
Yep. This was part of the vulnerability management standard that we had. Now, it could be you could call it something else, but you want to have it all in one place. So we had one standard that covered vulnerability management. So it covered parts of 6, parts of 11, a little bit of 2.
I'm always impressed when you guys can just start naming off the requirements. I was talking to someone last night and I was like, I don't have all the requirements memorized. And because they're working on memorizing the requirements. And I was
Don't work on memorizing them. Don't work on memorizing them.
Thank you, Peggy. Yes.
Do not work on memorizing this stuff, because when you are working this day in and day out for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, you don't have to worry about memorizing them. You have sources, hence the binder.
The binder.
Hi, folks. You don't need to memorize it. You need to know where to look.
Yes. Now, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, it's about if you can get the heart of it, if you can master it by knowing it's in there when you hear it. There's common sense stuff, like, you shouldn't leave your password hanging out somewhere for someone to read it and then use it on your stuff. Like that goes without saying. That's part of
it. Here's the thing. You should never be answering any questions about PCI until you say, let me research that and I'll get back to you.
I love that, Peggy. Thank you so much.
Period. Unless you've been doing this for 10, 15 years, don't ever just off the top of your head answer something. Say, let me get back to you. I have to research that.
Nice. Derek Watson, policies and procedures for security vulnerabilities. Yep. Ivan, vulnerability management documentation.
Yep. This is, and all of these bullet points need to be included in that vulnerability management documentation. So you as the ISA or whoever, PCIP, you're coming into an organization, you are going to be taking a standard or a policy and procedure or a process document, and you are going to be assessing it against these bullet points that you see in the reporting instructions. This is what needs to be included.
So, Peggy, is it like, okay, when I look at this for 6.1.a, for example, like there's a lot of words in there, right? But when I'm looking at the actual report, I'm going to be able to see these things in there pretty quick, right? Like I should see this, that it's a new vulnerability that was there. Like it caught something yesterday. Like I should see it showing up in the report. I should see that it says high risk or critical or low risk.
So, for example, when I used to look at, not to get down into the weeds into a specific requirement, but when we had a process for vulnerability management for 6.1, 6.2, 11.2-ish. So it was all running off of 11.2, where you have to do your quarterly scans, right? And they all have, and when you find vulnerabilities, you have to, this is where it loops, right? It's going to loop back to 6.1 because you have to have that risk ranking in place, right? You have to have that process. How do you do it? And this is why some organizations will end up scanning more than quarterly. They'll scan once a month because they've got the process down to a science. We're going to scan. The scan results are going to come back with all the vulnerabilities. We're going to risk rank it all, right? If you're a large organization, it could take a while. There's some automation involved. There might be some discussions involved. It takes maybe a week to risk rank a new report, right? But you also want to be able to see that other vulnerabilities have fallen off, stuff that you saw the month prior.
Yes.
That means that vulnerability actually got fixed according to the remediation schedule. there's a lot of moving pieces and parts with vulnerability management. So you have to know what they are, right? So that's why I say don't overthink this, because there's already a lot of moving parts. And the thing is, everything you need to do is spelled out in the green zone.
And, you know, everyone, you want to be careful too, like, because I know when I talk to some of y'all, the idea is like, I hear a lot, maybe I need to go get some additional training somewhere else on this. So people, like, you could be listening to this and you're like, I just don't know enough about this. Like, I'm going to have to go get a certification or take a training or something else. And there's people who manage this part. There's people who did get that information, and this is their job all day, vulnerability management.
Yep.
That does not need to be your focus. You do not need to spend all this extra money and all this extra copious time on just learning nothing but vulnerability management stuff. Like, you need to
unless you want to be a vulnerability management system administrator.
And if that's what you want, then you're not in the right spot. Yeah, there you go. You know, so temper your anxiety or whatever you want to call that comes in when you're reading this thing, this information. You're thinking to yourself, I'm not adequate, or you have all those insecurities. You do not need to be the expert in vulnerability management. Or
that's why you have system administrators who do this.
Yes, and that's why they're in the interview with you. They're in the sit down with you.
So, no. Back up, Jamie. Hi, me. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry. The ISA is not answering the questions in the interview. The system administrator is.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. I was in every meeting for a couple of reasons. I was a buffer between the QSA and the system administrator. If you have people who are very nervous, lots of people hate being interviewed. It's like they're sitting for the Inquisition, or they're going to have a root canal without Novocaine. It's a painful experience for them.
Yeah.
So what I always did is I did dry runs, meaning they practiced with me, right? Before they got and sat in with the QSA. So that was reason number one. I was there
to buffer,
right? I was there to also keep the QSA on track. So if my interview, when you see the interview and observation schedule that I have built out on our website, you will notice that everything that needs to be in the meeting invite goes into the meeting invite. And the QSA cannot move from those parameters. That's the boundary of the interview. If they start to go into, say, change management for an interview on something that has nothing to do with change management, I will say that's a different interview.
And I like that.
And I will stop them. You don't get to ask that question. I just wanted to find, nope, that's a different interview.
Better cut that thing off, everyone. Be like, not today, not today.
But I was also able, because I was on 90% of the interviews, and when I wasn't on them, my business partner, former coworker, Lisa, was on them. I had a QSA call in from a coffee shop, and I said, excuse me, there's a lot of background noise out there. Where are you? Well, I'm in a coffee shop. I'm like, we're doing the firewall interview. Have a nice day. This interview's done. Yeah. All right. Then I have also been on the other end where I had a system administrator who had to, walk through her management console. Oh, I forgot how I configured my management console. And I said, we're done.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Done. This interview's over. So,
you got to be, so, when I hear you talk about the experiences with buffering, when I hear you talking about your buffering experiences as the ISA, one of the things that I gather from that, Peggy, is you have to be engaging enough where you can be bold about shutting things down instead of just letting them drag on, or maybe it'll just magically appear for a moment or something like that, right? It's like, no.
If the QSA was wavering from the boundary set forth in the meeting invite, I would pretty much say that's not part of this interview. That's a different interview.
See, and then you also talk about like that. When I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that's where the project management piece of being an ISA, like that's how it overlaps, is like you cannot let, at least what I'm gathering from you.
Yeah.
You cannot let a meeting get out of bounds. You have to set those parameters up. You have to put that agenda. You have to put those guidelines in there and be like, this is what we have to run through and run to. We don't have time to be outside of that.
Right.
And I'll be honest, Peggy, when I hear that, I'm like, oh.
I had a QSA said, "Oh, I was just curious." And I said, "Well, no, we're not going to be curious.
Not paying you to be curious. Get back on track."
It's a different interview.
Yeah. Michael said, basically request the InfoSec policy and look at their vulnerability management section for policy and procedures. No. Then based off that interview, the VM team on all those bullet points in the green.
All right. So we need to have a little lesson real quick on the information security policy. The information security policy does not contain process and procedures. It is a basic outline of everything the information security policy covers for the company. All right.
But not the policy or not the procedures.
There should be no how-tos in a policy doc.
Okay.
All right. That's a process doc. So you have to understand the different types of documentation. Okay. Your information security policy is requirement 12.1. End of discussion. Okay. That's requirement 12.1. I'm not being a hard ass.
No.
I don't overthink this. Requirement 12.1 is your information security policy. And there's a bunch of things the information security policy needs to have in it. Okay. So it's going to have a small section on vulnerability management, but there's a whole standard that's going to cover vulnerability management for your organization. Okay. So we had, I don't know, I want to say we had at least a dozen standards. So information security policy is up here. It's up at the tip of the triangle.
Right. I'm following
you. Standards come down under here, right?
Yes. And then your settings.
And then all of your process-oriented stuff comes down at the base.
Oh,
that's the how-tos. That's the step-by-step instructions of how to do something.
Right.
How to create a firewall rule. How you risk rank. You're going to have a process for risk ranking, right? And in that,
we still need the information security policy, right? But it's not
for this requirement.
Yeah,
you need it for requirement 12.1.
Right. So for this requirement, yes, we don't need it for this one.
No.
But for validation, for compliancy of it all, we do need it at some point down in 12.
For 12.1.
Yes. Okay.
That's it.
I just want to make sure I'm following. I want to cover, because I know some people, they don't get to be on here with you and they don't get to ask their questions as one-on-one.
So if we want to flip really quick over to requirement 12.1, establish, publish, maintain, and disseminate a security policy. Okay. Examine the information security policy and verify that the policy is published and disseminated to all relevant personnel, including business partners and vendors. Review the security policy at least annually and update the policy when business objectives or the risk environment changes. Okay. Doesn't tell you what you need to have in it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
It gets a little deeper in, and I know they've changed it for version 4.
Michael says, good to know about that ISP. He says, thanks.
All right. So now we're going to come into 12.5. Examine information security policies and procedures to verify that there's a formal assignment of an information security to a chief security officer. That information security responsibilities are specific and formally assigned. And then there's a few sub-requirements there, right? So that's in your information security policy. as well as your incident response plan. Parts of that might be in there too.
Okay.
Okay. So again, top of the triangle is where your information security policy sits. Your standards are informed by the policy, but the standards come down to more individualized type things for log management, antivirus. I got to get in habit of logical access controls.
Okay.
It could be password management, but I think you want a standard is going to go up a level than password management, because there's going to be other things for access control, for identity access management that are bigger than just password management. Password management is like 5 bullets in that standard. Okay. And then you're going to have more process related docs revolving around password management. There's a lot of documentation in PCI, folks. There's a ton. 90%, 80% is process driven. So where the rubber hits the road is on your processes around your security controls. That will make or break you. So you're not going to be pointing to the information security policy for every single bit of any time it says policy and procedure. That's not where you're pointing. It's more of a individualized policy and procedure for log management, access control, vendor management, third-party risk, whatever you want to call it. But what you want to be looking at is the reporting instructions to make sure you've hit all the bullets, right? You might have more things that are in there, but you have to hit those bullets. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when the QSA is coming in to assess you, they're going to start doing keyword searches.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. How do you think they get through it?
Right.
They keyword search it.
Okay. Daniel says over here, he says, so we need to have training or mock interviews with our people as an ISA.
Absolutely. Before I kicked off all of the interviews during a report on compliance, I did mock interviews, and I made mock interviews mandatory for anybody who was brand new into their role as a system administrator. They had to do a mock interview so that they understood what they needed to do. But then I also opened it up to, called it my nervous Nellies and my nervous Neds. There's a lot of people out there who just don't want to be interviewed by anybody.
Sure.
So I would always just, do a mock interview with them. And I said, and don't worry about it. I'm going to be there with you. And this isn't a closed book test. Bring your operating procedures with you. Make sure you understand. Do a dry run with me, your manager, whoever, of walking through the management console. And I also said, and if you're really that uncomfortable, even though you're the brains behind this, bring your manager. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
So when you did those mock interviews and even the real interviews, were you using the template to help them through the
Actually, interviews? So the interview and observation schedule that I created is literally copy and paste everything that says interview and observation for requirement 1, right? So there might be 6 things that you get interviewed on, but 7 or 8 things that you need an observation on. And I'm like, there's no way we're going back to you for these 2 other things. So let's just do it all together.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
You're going to feed 2 birds from one hand.
Yes.
Right. Not only that, but when you follow the interview and observation schedule, you'll save over 100 hours. Wow. And that's like $20,000 in QSA fees.
That's amazing. Peggy, wow. Time is always money. Yes, Daniel.
It's called assess smarter, not harder. Don't make this hard. Don't make it
Yeah.
hard.
I like that. I like that a lot. So looking through the, let me get the screen back up. Oh, let's cut that off. All right. So looking through the ROC template, tell us about, help us out with these sections over here on the right side.
You don't have to pay attention to it. That's what the QSA has to do. That's their assessor's response. You can anticipate what their response is going to be. And to be honest with you, assessors do, depending on, you can have different processes for different assessor companies. So a lot of this that's in the report findings here, there might be like a brief 1 or 2 sentences, but then what there's going to be is there's going to be a list of hyperlinked documents or hyperlinked interviews that reference back to the executive summary.
Okay. On their side.
No, in the executive summary in the reporting template. There's an executive summary. Now, let's talk about this. Such a good segue into the executive summary.
That's what I'm here for, Peggy. I have something now.
Yeah, let's so it's at the beginning.
Okay.
Pull up the executive summary.
That didn't pop up the way I thought it was going to pop up.
Okay, so we're here. We're in the executive summary. There's a lot of information that needs to get filled out that's in the executive summary. The more information that you fill out for the QSA beforehand, the better off you're going to be. You need to have a list of all your MIDs, your merchant ID numbers, of all of your in-scope locations need to be included. All of your third-party service providers also get listed in here. Guys, this is where the brilliance of doing a scope assessment can be found. However, I break it down into better chunks and more manageable chunks. And this is why it always confused me. Why people weren't following the reporting template to do everything. I don't know. And we've built all of the logic into Polaris PCA, by the way. So we've built all of this logic that's in here. So when you go through here, oh, you've got the summary of findings. Keep scrolling.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to go into, there's summary overview. You have to have the high level diagrams go in here. See, insert high level network diagram goes right there in the executive summary. And when you do it during your scope assessment, you're going to feed a few more birds in requirement 1.
Okay.
Because you've already collected the evidence. All right. The definition of scope gets put in here, right?
Yes.
And the more upfront you are with your QSA before right before you kick off a ROC, I would take, so this was part of me double checking and making sure things were still the same, right? This is all part of a scope review. I would take what we did in the last year's ROC, send it out to everybody and say, okay, this is what we did last year. What's changed? And I got smarter about that because I did it more frequently. I usually did it once a quarter, especially when it came to payment card data flows. But you go through here and you're like, okay, they have to describe this. So how would I describe it and help them out so that they understood it? I would have the QSA come through and do a full end-to-end scope assessment, right? So that they were in on the meeting so that they could validate it. So that they knew right away and they could fill this out during it. The easier you make it for your QSA, the better life is all the way around. Your cardholder data environment overview. All your payment flows go in here.
Talk says, I need to print the ROC template to understand it more. Yes.
Yeah, you do.
I mean, if you were here in the beginning, we thought, and throughout many of the episodes, we always talk about the the famous binder that shows up everywhere and that everyone seems to be have except for little old me.
Print it out. Get it printed.
What did you say? Get it scented?
No, printed.
I thought you said get it scented. I was like, oh my gosh, Peggy. I was like, she's legit serious about this binder.
This is gold, guys.
Yes.
Gold.
Yes. Miss Eve, yes, printing it. Oh, okay. I would say print it at
Staples.
yeah, at the a copier store so that you can just get it all done and zipped out fast. But if
That,
you've got it at home and go for it,
to be honest with you, that's the thing I'm going to do for version 4. And one reason why I've held off printing it out, when we went through changes in version 3, they iterated like 6 times in a very short period of time. So there's been no iteration so far on version 4. And I'm like, okay, maybe.
Missy, you said with lavender.
So I'll be taking my laptop to an office supply store.
Yeah.
Plugging into their massive printer and getting it printed out for me.
Ivan has a question right here. He says, let's say if we have a SAC-A for a company that doesn't store, process, or transmit credit card data, except it's turned over to a third-party service provider, with the QSA mark NA on the ROC for the requirements that are not applicable.
So if it's a SAC-A company, they have, if it depends on the level of their merchant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking a level 1 merchant is doing a SAC-A? Or
is there? So in my mind, like if you're doing a SAC-A, you don't need to do a ROC.
You're not doing a report on compliance. So there's about 22 questions in the SAC-A. You have to be able to answer them. But if you don't do something because a third party does it, you're NA and you have the third party's attestation of compliance for that requirement area. That's all you need to do.
Yeah. Yes, level 1, he says. The question's kind of
ambiguous.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what's going to happen. If you're a level 1 merchant, but just say you're strictly in e-commerce, you don't do phone, you don't do anything. And it's just strictly e-commerce that you've outsourced your payment processing to. You would walk through with your QSA that process. The QSA would then go, okay, so we don't have to worry about, just for giggles, requirement 1.
Mm-hmm.
Requirement 1 becomes NA. Requirement 3 is probably NA. You're going to have things that are in play in requirement 12. You still need to have an incident response plan. You still need to have your InfoSec policy. You still need to have your third-party vendors. So you would step through this with the QSA. The QSA will determine what is in play and what is NA. Does that answer it? It should answer it. I think we're frozen and I'm tap dancing. Well, there's Jaime. He's back. So, Ivan, did that answer your question? You're going to walk through everything with your QSA, and the QSA is going to tell you what's in play and what is NA.
He said yes.
Okay. Because trust me, I tried. We had an e-commerce solution that was 90% of our transaction volume, and I was like, guys, we can reduce our scope in a big way if we went to a third-party hosted payment page, and if we did something about our call centers. It would have taken us down from, would have taken the cost of our report on compliance from like $300,000 a year to about $50,000 a year.
I don't know if someone is just trying to kick me off at this inopportune time for them. Maybe my kids just got home and they're just all on the internet, Peggy, and everyone's like,
well, it's okay. You're talked.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Ivan does says, yes, it does. Thank you. Okay, so he's good. I always appreciate questions about that because there's scenarios that come up where we talk about the third service, the vendors or third service providers. And I admit it's not enough. There's not enough information I have on those workings. But if I looked at them individually, I'm always like, yeah, I could recognize it, right? But so I appreciate the questions, guys. If you guys bring them out. So, All right. So, do you guys have out there
any other questions before we
right.
wrap it up tonight?
Yes, because
And did
I
you find
feel
this
so
helpful?
much.
Did you
Yeah.
find how many people, raise your hand, have already downloaded the reporting template?
I will be getting it printed out. I promise. I'm gonna get this all printed out for
Yeah.
myself. So I bought the binder already. So I was like, I got a sweet red binder to go with my Superman theme.
My thing is with the new version being 470 pages. I have like training slides that I teach from in here.
Oh my gosh!
I have to take them out.
You're gonna have to put tabs 3, 2, 1, and then 4.0 right next to each other of page 1, and or whichever.
Well, a good thing about my training slides is the first 5 classes are kind of like version agnostic. Doesn't matter what version you're doing, scope is still scope.
Yeah, scope is scope. Miss Eve said, going to Staples.
Me
I'll
too.
be right behind you.
Yeah, me too. I will be printing it out. Oh, good. Thanks, Michael.
Yep, he says this is helpful.
Yeah,
that's what we were saying in the beginning, Miss Eve. We were like, okay, it's a big difference from 321.
96. Yeah,
and it is meant to be. I don't want to say easier.
I don't find it easier.
Yeah,
I find it cluttered.
Yeah,
I find it very cluttered.
Updated. They say, well, that goes without saying. Anyway, very helpful. Glad it was that for you, Daniel.
Otherwise.
Gregory says he gives us thumbs up. He's an OU fan. Ivan says
good.
I did.
Yeah, yay.
Yeah, and so, for me, like I say, I love being able to learn something new and then understand the reason behind it. But one of the pieces is always the practical, right? So like how to take it real world. How can I take this and run with it? And
you
so
take the reporting template. That's your real world.
Yes. But there's always nuggets that you drop in here, Peggy, outside of that. Like that's the big umbrella, if I can say. Then there's always the small pieces. Like for me, I think one of the walkaways from here is not just to have the ROC template and use that as my guide, if that makes sense. But I liked your piece about the interviews, for example. So I think that's an important piece because I like those little details and those little pieces to the puzzle, if that makes sense. So I know that for me, I like the idea of the agenda, setting the boundaries and make sure everyone's sticking to it. And then also just being like, look, but I'm going to help those out. Like you said, and I agree with you. There are people who do not like to be interviewed. They do not like to be social at all. And you could argue it and you'd be like, even 1 or 2 people is social for them, right? And so it's like anything
and then they're done for the day. They've used all their words. They're done.
They're like, I'm taking PTO right after this.
Yeah, I gotta go.
And so I do appreciate that because I think that is a detail that, like, that's my style. I do like to run through things, practice, mock, and all that kind of stuff, just so that when the real event happens, it's like, oh, even if I don't make it 100%, I've practiced some with it, and if I cover 20% or 80% of it, that's better than none.
And the thing to remember is that the interviews are conversations. How do you do your job? Walk me through your step-by-step process. And you know what? When you do that, you're hitting all the interview questions. They've got their management console open, so they're walking them through step by step, and they're screenshotting certain things. That the QSA says, screenshot that, screenshot that, screenshot that.
And one of my styles in the, I've been in the corporate world for 15 years now. I don't play this blame game. I'm not looking to be like, you're not doing this, you should, and you're going to carry the brunt of that.
Interview. That does not happen. It doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is if you have a really good ISA sitting in on the interviews, that ISA will just end it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not an interrogation. It's not an inquisition. It's a conversation. The other thing I did is, because you will also have, all right, I'm going to go into Star Trek world for a second because this is the best way for me to describe it. All right. You can have a Vulcan QSA and a Vulcan system administrator. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
When a Vulcan interviews a Vulcan, The person doing the interviewing needs to be part Betazoid. They need to be personable. They need to be relatable. And so
Fill it out.
they need to be conversational. They need to be a little bit extroverted. You can't have one introvert interview another introvert. It just doesn't work. I've been on those interviews and I cringed. They're cringeworthy. And I'm like, I'm going to step in and let's reschedule this.
Yeah.
And then I would go to the lead QSA and I would say, dear lead QSA, I need this QSA to do all the interviews. Why? Because this person never should interview anybody. Ever.
I like that. I appreciate that.
And because I have Vulcans, I need non-Vulcans to interview Vulcans.
Yes. I love the reference, Peggy. It is hidden on, like, I get you 1,000%. And I'm like, yes, I love that. It's funny because after we're done, I know a couple people want to be calling. I'm like, did y'all hear that last piece she was saying? Because I know you know what I'm talking about. And I know they're listening right now. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Derek's in here. He says, this is my first live. Are there any other resources besides the ROC to further enhance my understanding of PCI? Derek, of course, the CyberGangsters YouTube is out here. I've got a Discord too, but I'm going to have Peggy share in a little bit some more for you. So just be patient if you don't mind. She will get to it. We've got a couple of sources that we're going to share that'll be very helpful. Okay. Yeah. Nikki Robles, I hope I pronounced your last name right. Always insightful.
You're an ISA. He's an ISA. How did I do?
Oh, you are? Oh.
How did I do, Nikki?
Yeah.
Are you a new ISA? Have you been in yeah. When did you?
So it'll take time for you to get the question and the answer back, but tell us, yes. And then maybe we could bring you on and you and Peggy can be like, y'all can be like, oh, this is my ISA experience. And then we'll be like, okay. ISA's geeking out.
They might be.
Sharing their war stories together. That would be fun. Daniel says, the ROC template is our handy dandy notebook.
Absolutely. 100%.
I am learning after last week to rely on that ROC template more. And like I said, there's a lot of people who've been asking. I've had a lot of people who are always asking me, and I asked this: what is a day in the life of a QSA/ISA, a PCI professional? What is their job like? And I'm realizing the ROC template, like if I study the ROC template, and honestly I say SACs because not every organization that you're going to, assess is going to be this level 1 super merchant that you're going to have to do all controls on.
No, but that's where the bulk of your ISA related positions are. It's in your bigger companies.
Okay.
In your bigger companies. Small to medium businesses can't afford ISAs.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay. Ryan, Peggy has taken the whole anxiety aspect of jumping into one of those roles and threw it in the trash. Thank you. I do. Yeah, I like that about. Yeah, I heard it. And bring plenty of cookies. Yes, Daniel, my favorite's chocolate chip. In case anybody wanted to know. Nikki said yes, ma'am.
All right.
Awesome.
Nikki, I just want to know how long you've been an ISA.
Yes. And Nikki, we might have you come on and share your story because I'm also looking for people who want to share their journey and how they got there and how they're doing and what their words of wisdom are. So definitely let me know. All right. So with that said, there was a question earlier about what else can we do to learn PCI. Yeah. So I will say first, because I'm going to give Peggy the screen to kind of share her spill. But before we do that, everyone, the PCI Council had their North American meeting. Was it a week ago already?
Yeah, it was last week.
Ago? It was just last week. Okay. Yeah. So just last week, there's another one for the European one, and that's going to be in Dublin. Okay. Now, our very own Peggy over here is going to be speaking there. And I am working to get a ticket because there are virtual tickets that you can purchase. They're $500 for non-participating organizations. I'll make sure I have it on my LinkedIn. I will put it on my YouTube, though. Also, the link to the PCI Council's website for that so that you can view it, review it yourself and see what you can participate in. Do take note that the times are in Dublin's time. I don't remember what they call it, or the European Standard Time or something
Yeah.
like that. So I will likely be getting up at 2 in the morning to watch some of these meetings because that's what the time translated to. The earliest meeting starts at 2 a.m. our time, and the latest, which is right before lunchtime, I believe. Oh yeah, the latest 3 to 5 o'clock
That
their
is
time.
right. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wait.
So just take note of that. But I will say I think it'll be worth it. Now, I'm purposefully waited for the Dublin one because I wanted to support Peggy and encourage her. And seeing as she's been a great friend to the show, and I just want to return the favor. If I'm able to attend it virtually, I want to support Peggy and encourage her with my viewership, if that makes sense. So
I think for you, my time on stage will happen for you at 6:30 in the morning because it's 12:30.
that's good. Then that'll be good.
I think I hit the stage at 12:30.
Okay. Actually, you might even be. Okay. Yeah. You're right. You're right. I think you're close there. So I will make sure to put that. So follow me on LinkedIn. Go to the YouTube. You can see that I will post something there either tonight or tomorrow so that you can see it. I've posted in previous episodes, but the information is out there. So you just have to go to the PCI Council's website, look for the European PCI meeting,
Yep.
and you'll see all the information there for you. Okay. Now, I specifically wanted to say the non-participating price because there are quite a few options when you get in there, and it can be a little bit intimidating and a lot of information. So if I can help you zone in, you would know if you're a participating organization. You would absolutely. So that's why I say look for the one that says non-participating organization. You'll see the virtual ticket to the far right, and it's like $495, so 500, and it's 4 days, Peggy. 3 days long, 4 days,
2.5. Starts Tuesday afternoon and it goes until Thursday afternoon, so 2 full days.
Yes. So be there. Look, if again with the PCI knowledge, and I'm going to let Peggy share, stay connected to me on LinkedIn. Again, with my LinkedIn, I share my perspective on it. My YouTube, I share, videos on PCI. Peggy and others come on and they talk about PCI also. And then I'm going to let Peggy share for her right now because she has a better resource than what I am.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I always have fun coming on with Jaime because the more people that I can teach how to do PCI for an organization. So we're talking from an insider's perspective, not an outside assessor, a QSA coming in to assess, right? I am talking about boots on the ground inside the organization and getting PCI, continuous PCI compliance right for the organization, because when you can get it right for the organization, it's just going to make your life and your QSA's life so much easier and a lot less expensive. Again, I have mentioned that a lot of this is process driven. So the better processes, the more effective and efficient that you can help organizations with their PCI compliance program, the better off everybody is. It's a win-win scenario for everyone. So to that end, and to drive effective efficiencies, meaning doing the right things well, we have a live course that we are teaching in the month of October. It is called PCI Compliance Essentials. Now, yes, it's ... for everyone in your organization. This is really geared towards getting everybody on the same page, talking the same language, using the same operational definitions, understanding scope, understanding network segmentation, understanding how to do a report on compliance, and definitely understanding the PCI DSS requirements and how the reporting template plays into all of this, right? So this course is, I'm teaching this over the course of 5 nights. So it's 5 modules. Registration is open. However, spots are limited. We're only limiting this class to 15 people. So get in before your spot gets taken by somebody else. And we're going to be teaching lots of wonderful things, even more that we've got in our resource center. So I'm going to be expanding in even more than the on-demand courses that we have in the resource center. So be there, be square. It starts October 2nd. We are going over 5 nights in the month of October, and it's going to be fantastic.
Excellent. So yes, I put the links for the council website. They're going to show up on YouTube, and I put payment card assessments website and the link to the compliance essentials in the chat also, again, YouTube. But you can look out for my LinkedIn. I'll post those up here shortly. And then also for Peggy's LinkedIn. And you can see where you can go to sign up for those things. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Real quick. Nikki says, fantastic, Peggy. Hey. Ryan says, Jaime has an awesome cookie recipe. Ask him for it. I do. Dion says ISA. I wonder if you're asking what is an ISA mean?
An ISA is an internal security assessor. And that ISAs work for organizations. They don't work for QSA companies.
So you probably
an ISA has to know everything a QSA knows and more.
Yes. So a QSA is kind of like a lawyer in terms of they help multiple people out, multiple organizations. ISA only is working for the organization that needs to be compliant.
Correct. And a QSA is a qualified security assessor. And yes, they can assess multiple companies. An ISA is working for the organization. And honestly, as an ISA, you don't want to try to work for multiple organizations. One's enough.
Yeah.
One's enough.
He said, sorry, I was mentioning her being the ISA since she said she's the insider.
Yes, I'm the insider.
Okay. All right. I don't know how this got in there. Thank you, Dion. Thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us. So with that said, I'm going to let Peggy go into the green room for a minute, and I'll come back and talk to you, Peggy. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for sharing your immense knowledge with us. Also, loved it. So if you'll just hang out in the back, I'll be right there once we wrap up. Thank you so much, Peggy. All right, everyone. So I want to say thank you again for coming out and hanging out with us here, CyberGangsters CyberSecurity. You know, I really love. Look, I have a heart to contribute and to, give back to the community. I wish that there was people who I could have asked questions to in this forum, in this setup. You know what I mean? And so that's I have another show that I do on Wednesday nights called the Social and Distancing Show. I've done it for years. And so when this opportunity came up to just start recording videos on what the PCI requirements were on the YouTube, I had to give it a name. Someone had said CyberGangsters a while back. I was like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to go ahead and just use that name and used it. And so I started posting videos up of my explanation of the requirements. And then I just started asking people to come on. And then I got professionals. And then Peggy was looking for, an outlet to share. And so I love being around people who want to contribute and help community, help their people do better. And so long as that heart is within me and I find others like that, you will continue seeing content on here that is going to contribute to our community. And I say ours heavily because I am not a person who believes in hoarding information or, keeping it to myself and not hoping that you excel also, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like there's enough for everybody out here. There's no reason for me to just take it for myself. And so on my Discord, I share jobs with people that I see in places that I think relate to PCI and that I think people in there can get. I share, fun stuff. I share stories. I ask questions. I try to engage my community as best I can in my LinkedIn and in my Discord. So I just want to be a little transparent and introduce you. If you're turning in tonight for the first time, that a little bit more about me. I have been 20 years in IT in various roles. I'm currently in analytics. I've been in the corporate world for the last 15 years, and I am transitioning into cybersecurity, and that is specifically with PCI. So I don't know why, but that is what's going to happen. Okay. So I appreciate you all coming in tonight and hanging out with us, and definitely let me know if you have any other questions or topics that you want us to cover in the future. I would love for you guys to provide that. If you have someone you want me to bring on to the show because you think they have a cool story or some information that is just helpful also, let's do that. Okay. And anyhow, I hope you guys have a great evening, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.